Welcome to this quick demonstration of Lightroom Pro Revolution. I'm Val Cameron, aka Valdemar V from Dreamlight. You can load Lightroom Pro Revolution in two ways. First, you can locate it in DAZ Studio Formats, My Library, in your Content Library tab. Then head to Dreamlight and locate LDPR. There you have three icons. You can go ahead and double click on Load Lightroom Pro R, and there it is. And you can see its content here in the Scene tab. And now that you have that loaded, you can go ahead and add a prop to your scene. I'm going to use Stonemason's Streets of Asia for this purpose. I'll locate it here, go to Props, or to Texture, Stonemason, Streets of Asia, and just double click on that. In some cases, you might want to right click and select Merge into Scene, in case that would override the previously loaded Lightroom Pro Revolution. In this case, it doesn't, since it's an older scenery. The first thing you're gonna do is to remove the backdrop that is supplied with the prop. You simply expand Stonemason's prop here and locate the Sky Dome section. There it is. You can either right click and remove it from Scene, or just hide it. It's up to you. Now the Lightroom Pro background shines through. Now the other way of loading is I'm going to simply remove the items loaded previously. Now I'm just having Stonemason Streets of Asia in my scene. And same fashion, I'm just removing the Sky Dome. Upon loading, I'm just removing the Sky Dome. Now I'm heading back to locate Lightroom Pro Revolution, My Library, Dreamlight. And I'm gonna right click and select Merge into Scene, and now it's loaded. Because if you double click on that icon, it will overwrite the scene entirely. So having that loaded, you're pretty much ready for render. You can just go ahead and click render, because everything is preset to the default settings, and the whole idea is to get you out of DAZ Studio into Photoshop as quickly as possible. Tapping into layering, which is one of the secrets to quickly getting render done and experiencing live adjustments in Photoshop, which we're going to do in a moment. There are more in-depth instructions in the user manual that is included with Lightroom Pro Revolution. So we're going to just quickly go through all the functions. As I said, you are ready to render right now, but we're not going to do that. I'm going to show you a few other functions. First of all, you have the LDPR camera. You always need to render through that camera. I'm going to start playing with the backdrop. You can simply select the Sky Dome item here in the Scene tab, and in the Parameters tab, you got some options here. Sky Dome X position. You can move the entire Sky Dome left and right, up and down, back and forward, and you can also rotate it to left and right, so that you can match the sun or sky or cloud pattern or backdrop. You got plenty to choose from. I'm going to show you in a moment how to change them. You can also scale it up and down in case your scenery stretches beyond the Sky Dome. You can extend it so that it covers your scene entirely. And that's pretty much it. Having that selected, you can also go to the Content Library and head back to a subfolder called Backgrounds. That's going to open up a whole section of 95 backdrops, and these are pretty darn amazing. And you got everything from surreal to space to normal daylight, cloudy or sunset backdrops, so that you have plenty to choose from. And while you have that selected, this kind of object is as simple as just double clicking on them to change the backdrop. Now this is changed, and you can rotate it here to see how it affects your scene. And you can just select pretty much anything here and play with them until you find your perfect match. Awesome. You can undo the Sky Dome rotations, and you can also undo the preset loading, so you can go back and just get that initial Sky Dome loaded here for you. The next thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna quickly show you the built-in fog effect. By selecting the camera in the parameters tab, then you can click on fog and have the start distance changed or the color of it. These are preset, you don't need to change them. There are unique cases where you can and should change them, more on that in the user guide. And regarding color and intensities, it's not so much that I want you to do that inside DAZ Studio. You can do that. The main idea is to get you out of DAZ Studio. You can play with the colors individually later in Photoshop. Just going with the default here is the way it's designed to be. The options here in the scene tab give you a few options here in the parameters tab you can just go ahead and play with. And these are made really simple. The bottom ones, sunlight intensity, skylight intensity, and ambient light intensity, those are meant really not to play with unless you need to. Here's how it works. The entire thing is preset and ready to render out of the box. And in case you have a really bright scene or the empty or plain looking scene that will catch more lighting than a textured scene like this one, then you can override the settings and lower them. Vice versa, you can higher them as well. But that's really not something you need to play with, because you can alter the intensity later in Photoshop. So it's kind of a backup here if you need to lower that. And the two options you really have is skylight resolution, which is how precise is the skylight gonna be affecting your scene. The default 4 lights will do some impressive quality renders, so you don't always have to go higher up. And you got the shadow quality. How will the shadows be rendered? Do you want them to be really quality, a little bit faster, or really fast? And that of course affects the quality as well. That's it. There are no more settings here. And the only thing you really need to do is to set your camera and position the sunlight. I'm going to do the first thing first. I'm going to set the camera. Something like that. And having that set, you can really just go into the sunlight camera here and set it. And you're simply pointing the sunlight, and with that set you're done, and there is really nothing more to set here. You can try to raise the camera just slightly up. That's it, and we're ready to render. And before rendering, you always set the settings. I'm going to just go with a little bit lower resolution so we can see that in the screen recording size. You can pretty much use bucket size 8, max ray trace depth. That's the reflections in your scene. 1 will render reflections, 0 will not render reflections, and 2 and 3 will render more reflections. So that's up to you how much time you've got and how much quality you want out of your render. Then you got pixel samples X and Y, keep them at 3, shadow samples 16, and all the other ones you can just keep at 1. And this one shading rate is really the quality of your the precision of your render. 1 will render pretty decent render. I'm gonna use 0.5. Will take a little bit longer to finish, but it's gonna be a little bit more quality as well. And when you're ready, don't click on render, because that's gonna render a preview. So you can always render a preview using the default render button. The main purpose is to use the render LDPR function here. And you also have that in the content library here in the main LDPR folder. You got render LDPR. Clear mattes. I can just quickly cover that. Some items like figures or anything else might have some ambient in it, which is simply self-glowing, and you can mostly see that when you select an item and head into the surfaces and locate the ambient slider here. And those might be set for different levels for various objects, and they might interfere with how the finished render looks like. For instance, the Genesis figure has some self-glowing skin that will look differently. It will have more lighting to it and will also catch more lighting. So you can, if you want to remove all of those instead of adjusting them manually here, you can just double click here on remove ambient. That will clear all the ambient from the from all the objects. And there are of course some cases where you want to keep them. For instance, if you have lanterns or lights or lamps that you want to self glow, then you might want to keep them glowing in your render. That's pretty much it, and just gonna render LDPR. And I'm just let it finish here, and it's gonna take a few minutes to finish. It's pretty quick, and it will keep track of the progress here, say what layer it's rendering. And the whole idea is to, as I said, is not to make the tweaks inside DAZ Studio, it's to get out of DAZ Studio and do the tweaks live inside Photoshop. That's the power of it, and that's the whole idea of it. So you're not meant to spend any time in here. It's basically load your scene, add the LDPR, adjust the sunlight, and render. It's that easy. It's nothing complex at all. And as explained in the user guide, when you have lots of semi-transparent objects like IVs or grass or leaves or some fences, even hair, then it's wise to maybe use a different shadow type that is faster. I mean, still fast, but in some cases it's wise to either use a different shadow type, or even select the items if possible and just turn off shadow casting on them. That will increase the rendering speed. There we go. We got a few more layers. It's gonna do them really quickly here now. So I'm showing you live exactly what happens, and we got a backdrop there and the fog itself. That's it. We are done, and we are leaving DAZ Studio. And just before leaving, yes, you can just save your scene, and it will remember all the settings you have, all the settings you have made. You can load scenes as well. And we are inside Photoshop. You can use pretty much any Photoshop version from 6.0 up to the final version. It's been tested in C2 and CC, the last one. And as long as you use an English version, then you can pretty much use any version, because it's very, it doesn't use any special function. It's very easy to handle. And I've tested it on a Swedish version, and that works pretty okay, although there are some mismatches on the filters here. So I don't recommend you use it in a non-English version. First thing to do is to go to File, Open, and locate your Studio folder, which is located on a PC or a Windows-based machine. It's under My Documents, DAZ 3D, and then you got the Studio folder here. And you look at My Library, Dreamlight, Lightroom, Revolution, and you got the Output folder here. And this folder is categorized with the settings you have been using. And also, if you switch to Detail List here, you can see that last changed is today's date. I'm doing this recording as of this date and this time, so you can easily open that folder and see that here are your layers that Lightroom Pro Revolution created for you. Now the thing is, you have to look at them and view them in the right order. And then you select just the first one, click on Shift, hold it down, select the last one, this is very important, and click on Open. This will open all the layers in the specific order. Next, you go to your Actions palette. If you don't see it, you can just go to Windows and click on Show Actions. It says Hide Actions here, but if you don't see them, it's going to just click on Show Actions. Next, you simply click on LDPR Combine. Click on Play, and it's going to automatically mix and match all the layers and produce the final image. Now what happens now, I'll just move that out of my way, is that you have all your layers here and you can play with them and adjust them live. First you have the fog, You can also disable it. The fog is simply something you can play with as far as intensity goes. And you can also add more of it by duplicating the layer. So you can add more fog. And of course you can add all basic operations on them. You can just increase the intensity of the fog really heavily. So you have that power to play with those settings even after the render is completed. So you can completely change the look and feel of your render just while playing with a single layer. Now I'm not going to do them as heavily, so I'm just going to remove those. You got the sun, and you got a sun copy already done for you, which means the sun has two layers, and the first one has intensity 100, the other one has intensity 50, and that's because I personally like to have a punch in my scene where I'm having my sunlight, and this is of course up to you how much you want. You can just play with a single layer and just remove it completely, or just play with it as strong as you need. I'm gonna set it to probably around 50 is pretty okay looking. Then you got the sound bounce, and it's one of the differences between the original Lightroom Pro and Lightroom Pro 2 that didn't have these features. This one does add a special version of sound bounce, and you can feel it. It simply bounces off the sunlight, and you can also adjust it exactly how much you want. Then you have the skylight, which is the light from the sky, and you can also adjust its intensity. And if you want even more, you can just duplicate the layer and do more. Just remove that. In the same fashion, you have the sky bounce. That bounces off the skylighting, so it hits items from underneath. And depending on your scene, that's gonna vary how much you want. Then you got the ambient, which is the main overall lighting. You can pretty much overpower your scene, or just go with something less intense. And you've got the background, which is of course the sky. So you can tone it down, or you can just duplicate it if you want it to really scream in the background. And that's pretty much it. You can just play with it, and with that make a live adjustment to your render. And when you're done here, you can simply bring out the actions palette again, and you have three filters: the default, Miami, or cold. And a good idea is that when you are done with these main settings, you just save your scene as mix. It's already pre-named for you and in the correct folders. Just save it as a PSD image, so you can always bring it back. And now you can just apply Miami filter and click on play, and it's done. So now you've got some more options to play with. You have the gamma, which is really a fade gamma, but it's a kind of an overall thing you can play with and see what you like. You have glow, which are simply the bright parts of your image glowing in various sizes and intensities. So you can decide how much glow you like. You have the extra tint. That's an additional layer. You can increase that if you want more of it. So you can play with that. And you got this one that kind of frames your image and adds a little bit of faded edges, so to speak. You can either remove it or add it and play with it. So it's up to you how you want to play that. And that's pretty much it. When you're done with this, you can again save this image, but this time use maybe 2, which is the second mix, right? And then you can just flatten the image, and you're done. And you can easily go back and load previously made images. Just going into that output folder. And here I just quickly loaded a previous image I did, and we could just combine the layers. And when you're combining a scene that is covered, with lots of where lighting is obstructed, you can easily go for overpowering the sunlight, because it doesn't hit your scene that heavily. So you can increase that and just duplicate it and continue duplicating it until you have that desired effect. That's usually what happens when you're in the woods and light is obstructed. Then the camera would capture the available lighting, and those sunny spots would be a lot brighter. So you can play with that and achieve that precise effect. And you can add a heavier fog, maybe even more. Just punch it some more. So this is where you design your image. You don't design your image inside DAZ Studio. You keep it in here. And when you're done, you simply click on the folder, the color scale you want, default manual code, click on play, and that's it, it's done for you. And I'm going to show you one more. First, close this. Always use just one at a time. And as you can see here, I've just removed the ceiling, let some lighting through. It's made for outdoors, but it will indeed work indoors as well. And I've just adjusted the folders here, the layers to my taste. And then when I'm done, I'm just going to select Miami filter and click on play. And that's it. And you can continue adding the filters. If you add it once, you can always click on play again and continue adding, making it more and more and more of that effect. So it's possible to stack the layers on top of each other. And that pretty much ends this quick overview. And this is how easy it is to use. It's quick, it's instant, it gives you perfect control over your finished result. With that said, I hope you enjoy your new Lightroom Pro Revolution light set and create some fabulous DAZ Studio renders. I'll see you next time.